What have I gotten myself into? Hey guys, Macy here, the Bright Side Girl, and today I am doing my September wrap-up. I've read 11 books this month and I have DNF'd 4. If you're not familiar, DNF means I did not finish them. And most of the books, when I DNF, I try to go at least 50 pages in so that I can get a really good feel for the book and make sure that it's something that I do not want to continue with. Usually it has to be something that just is like I'm strongly against, because I usually can enjoy some aspect in almost any book, especially with like young adult or children's. But this month, I think because I did a lot more like spooky themed books, I had a few more that I was not interested in, so I'll go over those. Sorry for the kind of funky shadows. I'm not really sure what's going on with the weather today, but that's why I look kind of spooky, which is probably good for fall. Okay, so we're gonna start off. I try to start off like what I read from the beginning of the month until the end, so we're gonna go for that. So first off, I finished The End. This is by Lemony Snicket. This is the final book in the series of Unfortunate Events. This is book 13. I tried to squeeze this in last month's wrap up, but I couldn't quite finish it in time. And I have very mixed feelings. The last book or two were a lot different in tone and in just the overall writing. The writing style was the same, but just like the situations and stuff were a lot different, which I kind of expected because you can't just do the exact same thing over and over again. But I don't know how I felt about this. I loved the series and I really liked certain things, but there were so many questions for me that were left unanswered that to me there were so many that it took away from the story rather than leaving you with this kind of cool, haunting, you know, wonderment, which is what some books can do, is they'll leave some things open-ended and you kind of fill it in with your imagination. But for me, there were so many things that were left open that it made me almost not like the whole story as a series. I feel like I maybe missed some things while reading them, and it's something that I need to reread. I actually might make my husband read them because I found some of it very confusing, and I liked it. I mean, the writing style and everything is so good. It has good lessons for kids and adults. But let me know what you guys thought of The End. I don't know. I'm not sure yet. I can't decide. That being said, I found the Beatrice letters last month. I think I did a book haul on it. And this is like a little companion novella that goes with it. It's in like a little file folder. And in here there are letters from Beatrice and Lemony Snicket. Again, I was hoping this would like maybe clear some more things up for me, but it made it way more confusing, and the letters were all written out of order, and there was written by three different people, not two different people, and I don't know, I kind of found it cool, but I kind of got even more confused, so I don't know how I felt about this one. Okay, moving on. I snuck in a Neil Gaiman book. You guys know, if you've watched my previous wrap-ups, that the first Neil Gaiman book I attempted was a complete disaster. I didn't go into detail on it, but I was like left somewhat really horrified, and not in a good way, and kind of creeped out. This book, The Ocean at the End of the Lane, it's a very small novel, but it was really good. It's very creepy. It's very magical. It's about a middle-aged man, and he goes to a funeral back in his hometown, and then he goes back to the house where he grows up in the neighborhood, and he kind of reminisces on the adventures that he had there with a neighborhood girl. It's very magical realism. There are just spooky things in here and magical things. There were some quotes in here that I really liked. I think I liked the overall wrap-up of the story, but it was really creepy and very different than anything else I've read, but I kind of gobbled it up in a day, so I really like this one. Then for the rest of the beginning of the month, I had a theme. So I kind of did this Wizard of Oz theme because I felt like there's witches in Wizard of Oz and we're getting into fall, and I wanted to kind of keep up with that. So I had Wicked, and I finally read it. Wicked might just be my favorite musical of all time, and it is based on Gregory Maguire's book. I've read one of Gregory Maguire's other, I listened to one of Gregory Maguire's other books, and I didn't really like it. It was really weird. He has some, this is an adult book, just so you guys know. I wouldn't say that it's appropriate for younger generation. You can kind of leave that up to your own discretion, but I would be like a full adult before you read this. Just throwing that out there. Plus it's a difficult read. Like, it is very descriptive. It's only 400 pages, which is pretty standard, but it is wordy. You have to focus. I only read this one before going to bed because anything that was going on in the background or anything that was distracting me got me kind of lost and confused. I kind of enjoyed that though, because I am not used to reading books like that, and it was just a different experience. And I am very familiar with the Wizard of Oz story and Wicked the Musical, although Wicked the Musical is really not anything like this at all. Wicked the Musical is a little bit more light and fluffy with some darkness in there and some twists and turns, but Wicked, the retelling in the book, is very dark, deep, and in depth. So if you guys aren't familiar, this is a kind of a retelling on Wizard of Oz and about the life and times of the Wicked Witch of the West and her journey meeting Glinda and going to school, and a little bit about like her parents and how they met and when she was a baby. And it's he has some like perverse, weird things that are in here that I just don't think add anything to the book. I don't really like that about Gregory Maguire's books. However, he does have a great storytelling aspect. This is kind of read almost like an older book. It feels to me like if we found this in the future, we would feel like this is maybe from like the early 1900s style. So I don't know. I really liked it overall, and I want to read the other two books. But it's not one of those books that you just fly through, and it's definitely not one of those books that you immediately have to finish the next in the series. So hopefully that wasn't too confusing. Then I read The Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum. This is just the original story, and it's got the cute little like illustrations and stuff in this one and the cute little spine. I have read this before and I really liked it. I went and picked up all the other books in the Wizard of Oz series. There's like 13 more from L. Frank Baum. I think I've read 3 or 4 in the past, but I haven't in a while. I don't know if I'll get to them actually anytime soon. I love it. It's so good. It has, I don't know, it's really easy to read even though it's over 100 years old. It is well thought out. He said that he wrote it because he was tired of reading fairy tales that only have this like really deep moral purpose, and he wanted to write a story for the sake of reading a story. And of course there's some like cool moral things that happen here, but he wrote it to just do this whimsical, fantastical journey, and that is definitely what you get in this book, and it's very different from the movie in certain aspects, so I would recommend reading this if you guys are Wizard of Oz fans. And continuing on with Wizard of Oz, I attempted to read Dorothy Must Die by Danielle Page. I was so excited to start this one. I even have the second book already lined up. It has a beautiful cover. It is a beautiful naked book. It was super hyped. The book preview or the book trailer is amazing, and I don't normally like book trailers, but it was creepy and it was cool. This is kind of I wouldn't necessarily call it a retelling of Wizard of Oz because it's set after the events of Wizard of Oz with a girl named Amy. And she is basically living in a trailer park in Kansas, and she also she has a kind of a crappy life, and she gets whipped up in a tornado and gets sent to Oz, and she finds out that Dorothy has like destroyed everything and taken everyone's magic, and everything is backwards. Like the Tin Man and the Scarecrow are on Dorothy's side, and they're not really good people or characters, and Glinda's kind of doing bad things and all this stuff. It has a great premise. Amy gets picked up from the Revolutionary Order of the Wicked, and basically her mission is to go and kill Dorothy and break down the system to restore Oz to like its full beauty and happiness. Great. I love that idea. However, I don't like talking negative about books because I'm just like such an easy person to please that it's really hard to get me like really passionate against something. But you guys, this one was just, to me, there are young adult books that have been written and then they have been classified as young adult because of the characters' ages and situations that are happening. And then there are books that someone sits down and writes specifically for young adults. And those are the ones that I don't like, because they write them on what they think their opinion of teenagers or young adults are. And I know I'm not a young adult, and so that's not the issue here though, but they write them kind of dumbed down or kind of over the top with their like lingo and things like that. And just like this opening scene starts out with her getting in a fist fight with the popular girl in their school in Kansas who's pregnant, and it's all a bunch of like, oh my god, you're such a biatch and all this stuff. And the lingo was so weird, and it was very much like, oh my god, what's happening in Oz? This is so crazy. I just can't believe it. And I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. The final kicker for me, because I read 130 pages in this before I gave up, because I was like, it was an easy read still, even though I wasn't really enjoying the lingo and everything that was happening. But the final kicker for me is she gets picked up by this revolutionary order of the wicked, and they whirl her away to wherever their place is, and she's with this wicked witch. And this is not really a spoiler because it's kind of in the synopsis, and the witch is like talking to her about things, and she's like, oh my gosh, what have I gotten myself into? Which I didn't really like the first time around. And then one sentence later, after the witch says something else, she says, what have I gotten myself into? Again. And I'm thinking, maybe this is just an editing error, or maybe she is having some other kind of issue that I'm thinking about. And then on the next page, after they've talked some more, she says, what have I gotten myself into? And I threw the book in the car. I was so mad. I was like, why? Why do you need to say that 3 times in a page and a half? It just, to me, the writing style was just so weird. And nothing against Daniel Page or anything like that. This was just not the book for me. I just did not enjoy it at all. I felt like it was just too, I don't know. Sorry, I'm getting so passionate, and I hope I don't make anybody mad, because if you like this book, that's fine. I'm glad, because everybody should definitely have their own opinions about everything, and I am trying to look on the bright side and always like find some kind of good aspects about the book. So again, the premise behind this and some of the characters were cool. I liked that she had a pet rat named Star, that was kind of cool that she carried around with her and different. But just the dialogue between the characters drove me crazy. So I DNF'd this one. Sorry for the long explanation, and I'm probably going to unhaul it soon. So after Dorothy Must Die, I decided I needed something that I knew I was going to like at least be kind of sucked into it, even if I wasn't going to love it. So I picked up The Coldest Girl in Coldtown by Holly Black. This was on my TBR for fall and Halloween. I wasn't really sure what this one was about. I knew it was like creepy and spooky, and I thought it was just kind of like maybe paranormal or something like that. This is a vampire book, which I didn't know. The opening page, Tana woke lying in a bathtub. Her legs were drawn up and her cheeks pressed against the cold metal of the faucet. A slow drip had soaked the fabric on her shoulder and wetted locks of her hair. The rest of her, including her clothes, were still completely dry, which was kind of a relief. That's the opening page. This is about modern day times, and vampires are just a thing. They're just part of us. They exist. There are certain towns across the US that are designated cold towns. So vampirism is supposed to be kind of like a disease, so kind of like how we sometimes do with the zombie stories. And basically if a vampire bites you and doesn't kill you, and you suck someone's blood, you become a vampire, and it's like an infection. And if you don't, then you have to either sweat out the infection, and this takes 88 days, and you're going to be like craving blood and be like a psychopath, or you're going to die. And you might even die when you're trying to sweat out the infection. So this is kind of a thing. So what happens is, on the parts of the US and the world that have been designated more infectious than other parts, they lock them down and they call them cold towns, and no one's allowed to leave. And you can enter, but then you can't leave unless you hire like a bounty hunter to bring in a vampire. And it was so cool. It was so in depth. The world was so well thought out. The vampires were just the right amount of classic vampire and a little bit more modern, and Tana, basically, she's at a party in the beginning of this book, and I don't want to spoil it because I didn't know anything going into it, and I was really glad. This book was so scary. This is probably one of the scariest books I've read. It's got some gore in it, it's got some graphic detail. I wouldn't say it's like over the top, it's nothing like Stephen King or anything like that. I'm just kind of a wimp, and I don't really read spooky books. Like the scariest book I read before this was either The Ocean at the End of the Lane or Harry Potter 6, because that scared the crap out of me too. But I actually really enjoyed it, and I like read it at night, and it like scared me, and I like wouldn't go to the bathroom because I was worried about vampires. I don't know. Normally fantasy books don't scare me, but it is graphic and gory in some parts, I think, as Holly Black's books often are, but I just love the world. It ended kind of whimsical and cool. She might be writing a second one. Really enjoyed it, and I'm excited to read more from Holly Black. Then on audiobook, but I have the physical copies, I finished Beautiful Chaos and Beautiful Redemption in the Beautiful Creatures series. So this is book 3 and book 4. Book 3 was good. I mean, you guys, I really liked these. I thought they were good. I know that there's mixed feelings about the second, third, and fourth books in the series. Some people didn't even get to the fourth book, but listening to them, that Kevin T. Collins reads them on audiobook, and he is absolutely fantastic. He is so good at doing all the different voices and making you fall in love with the characters, and the character development, and there's so many characters, is just so good in these stories that is kind of what pushes you through, even though parts of them are really confusing and parts of them kind of don't line up, because the world building is so in depth that it didn't follow through on certain aspects that didn't make sense, and I didn't like a few things that happened, but overall I liked it as a whole. I thought it ended well. I liked that there was very magical and kind of witchy and all that stuff, but I would recommend that even if you like read these before and didn't like them, listen to them on audiobook, because they are just so good, and I think that's why I might have enjoyed them more than some other people did. And yeah, I really liked them. I really liked the Castor Chronicles. I don't want to go too in depth on these because I don't want to give away spoilers for anybody else that's catching up, but yeah, listen to these on audiobook. I thought they were great. Then I read The Water Mirror by Kai Myers. This is, I think, a children's or like middle grade. I think it's a middle grade book. This originally was written in German and translated. I bought this originally because there is a mermaid on the back. So this is about two girls that are in Venice, Italy, and they're orphans, and they are getting sent to apprentice a master mirror maker. And there's this part in Venice where a magic is all existing, like they've discovered hell, and we've made a pact with hell. They have mermaids, and we kind of abuse them and use them to like pull our ships, and like we eat them. And then there's these stone lions that the policemen ride around, and there are these two kind of magical places in this one part of Venice where there is a mirror maker, and he makes mirrors out of water, so he kind of can work with water like other people can work with metal. And then there is a master like weaver, and he can make these enchanted fabrics that can make women look prettier and lose weight and all this stuff. They are sent to apprentice the mirror maker, and one of the girls is blind, and the other girl, her story was she was found on the water in a basket. And in the water, they, instead of kind of like, they don't necessarily talk about God, but there is a flowing queen that is like the essence of the water, and everybody kind of believes in the flowing queen and her magical powers. This was so enchanting. It was dark, it was mysterious. The creatures in here that are kind of dark and creepy are super dark and creepy. The descriptions are really intense on the creatures and things that are in here. I absolutely loved it. This had like Harry Potter detail to it. It's a shorter book, obviously, but it had that just that super magical and well thought out world, and I loved that it was set in Venice. That was really cool. I love the two girl characters. I really recommend this, and I'm going to start on book 2 immediately. Sorry you guys, this is a long video. Then I picked up these in a book haul a while ago. This is Immortal by Gillian Shields. This one again, I don't want to give too much away. I really didn't think I was going to like it. This cover, I can't decide if I love or hate. I picked these up because they were a quarter and I didn't really think I would get around to it, but I read this one in a day. It's a gothic mystery. It is about a girl whose, I think, mother died at birth, and then her dad is in the war. I think we're in modern day times or something like that. But her dad goes to war and her grandma who took care of her is sick, so she gets sent to this like somewhat prestigious boarding school. It's like a creepy, like old-timey boarding school where like they can't have cell phones and they can't communicate, you know, digitally and things like that, and they have really strict rules, and if you get so many demerits and you get kicked out of the school, and there's all this old-fashioned stuff that's going on. I love boarding school stories, I love school stories, and it's very gothic. There's magic involved, there's immortal beings, and this is told from the main girl's perspective and also from the girl that they named the school after was Lady Agnes, and her journal is in here. So one chapter will be from Lady Agnes from like 1894, and one chapter will be from modern times, and you kind of like unwind the story together, and it was just really cool and really interesting. I read it really fast. I just really liked it. I thought it was very magical, very gothic, and perfect for fall. However, I've started the second book, and I'll let you guys know at the end, but I'm like not really into it, and I'll go into that later. But I really liked Immortal, and it can stand alone, I think, by itself. You're not like required to read the next book, but yeah, I liked it. Immortal. Okay, now for a couple more DNFs. I had Nightlight from the Harvard Lampoon. This is a mockery of Twilight, and maybe it's because I like Twilight, or maybe it's because I don't really enjoy this kind of writing, but I read like 2 pages and I was just done. It was too much to me. I don't know. It's like Bella, like when she goes to meet her dad, she trips over a toddler and smacks into the terminal, and then her dad's like, "Oh, Bella, you're so clumsy." And then there's weird jokes in here about like her mom's a child and can't be left alone, and I don't know. I didn't get it. I didn't like it, so I'm gonna donate this back. Then we have Life and Death in Twilight. This is the 20th or 10th, whew, not 20th, 10th anniversary edition of Twilight, and this is told in gender reversals. So they switched it so that Bella's character is actually Beau and it's a guy, and then Edward's character is something else and it's a girl, so it's a girl vampire, and everybody is switched except for her parents. Carlisle and all of them are switched around. Again, I really like Twilight, you know, hate on me if you want, but I'm sure the story works, but I couldn't let go of Twilight and going to this as like a new story. I couldn't. I got confused all the time because I kept switching the main character back to a girl and the other ones back to boys, and because it was just similar enough that it was hard to reverse, because she changed certain things to make them gender appropriate, but for the most part she just kind of swapped some names around. So to me, if you're going to rewrite it, you need to like rewrite the whole thing, which obviously was going to take forever, but it was just too similar for me to get into it as a new story. So sadly, I didn't like this one. And then I read 50 pages of, or like 80 pages of Marked by PC Cass and Kristen Cass. I had no intentions of reading this series at first because there's 20 of them, and I like vampires, but I'm not like super into vampires. But I found this in paperback and it's really pretty, and it was a quarter, so I got it, and I like to read paperbacks at the beach. But again, I had this similar problems I did with Dorothy Must Die. I felt like this one was written for teenagers and adults trying to act like teenagers rather than just writing about teenagers, if that makes sense. Okay, the opening chapter, I'm going to read from you for this again. Just when I thought my day couldn't get any worse, I saw the dead guy standing next to my locker. Great opening line. Literally within 2 pages, this dead guy, you find out, is a vampire. Again, kind of like Coldest Girl in Coldtown, vampires are just like commonly known and walking around, I guess, and like, I don't know. And he marks her. He's like, "You are marked for the house of the night," and she gets a mark on her forehead and then has to leave school and go home, and her parents freak out, and this is all really early on. And she's just like, "Well, I guess I have to go to the house of the night now. I wish my parents would understand." And I was like, what is happening? And not in a good way. They didn't explain anything about vampires or what was going on or why they're walking around among us. Like Coldest Girl in Coldtown immediately within like so many pages started explaining about what was happening in modern times and how the vampirism was a disease and all that stuff. But with this one, you just have to like accept that vampires are a thing, and then there's this house of the night that they go to when they get marked. And I don't know, I feel like halfway through the book you should at least explain a little bit what's going on. There are books that you can have mystery and have mystery throughout the whole book, kind of like Immortal, and then there are books that you have to have some kind of explanation for certain events for us to like get into it. And plus, just the main character was just like, oh man, this totally sucks that I'm a vampire now. But it was also supposed to be like a creepy book. So if you're gonna make like kind of like a ditzy, like fun vampire book, then you have to keep it that way. You can't expect us to take it seriously and make it kind of creepy and dark later on, if that makes sense. So I'm gonna DNF this one as well. Okay, and lastly, I read Fallen by Lauren Kate, and I just finished this one yesterday. I had this one, I just really love this cover, and I knew it was going to be like a creepier read. This one, all I knew about it was that it was about angels to some extent. Okay, really liked it, and I'm going to go on like a hunt to find the second book because I want to know what's happening and I want to read more. However, there are some major issues that I have that may or may not get resolved in the other books that just don't really line up and don't make sense. And there is a lot, I mean, you've got to get into like the last 40 pages of this book, and it's 400 and something pages, before you get any explanation of anything that's happening. And you don't get a complete explanation. This is not like a one book read. But the characters are really good. This girl is basically, she has seen shadows like around her appear randomly since she was little, and when she would tell her parents, they took her to like a psychiatrist and they tried to put her on medication, and so eventually she just quit talking about it. But then something strange happened at a party one time and a boy wound up dying like around her, and she didn't know what happened, so they sent her to basically a reform school with all like the bad kids to kind of straighten her up. But she has no memory of what happened at the party, and she technically didn't do anything, so she's like this goody two-shoes in this reform school. So I liked that, and there are all these like hard grungy characters of all these like bad kids that do certain things and they break the rules and they try to get away with stuff. So I really liked that. I loved the characters, I liked the setting. There's a little bit of a love triangle, kind of, that happens. I'll go into more complaining later after I do like a full series wrap up if I read the whole thing. But as of right now, I liked it and it was worth the read. It's an easy read. It keeps you kind of sucked in. But I need to read more of the books to make a final decision on whether or not I like the story. That was really lengthy because I really enjoyed some of these books, so I wanted to like go into detail on describing things. But that was my wrap up. Stay tuned in October for way more creepy reads, hopefully fun, mystical vibes, and I will see you guys next time on The Bright Side.